Welcome back to Sweet Yellow House, and this is our Forgotten 5 Tuesday, and this is the third installment of our Tuesday series. So let's get started. Project 1, I have this ceiling tin that I've had for a while. It was from an old building I used to have, and I spray painted it like a copper color a long time ago, but it's just way too bright. So I'm just gonna tone it down a little bit with some white wax, and I'm just gonna put that all over, and then I'm just gonna wipe it back, and that's just pretty much what I'm going to do with that. So then I'm going to take some dark wax, and I'm just going to kind of put a little bit on there, and I'm not doing it really heavy. I'm just kind of doing it like a really light hand in that. So I put it on and I wipe it back, and that's pretty much all for that one. And this is what it looks like, how I styled it. So now we're going to move on to project 2, and project 2 is this really heavy vase thing, and it's probably like more of like that old Tuscan style that someone got rid of. I think I thrifted this. So I'm going to start out with some faded burlap, and I'm going to add some baking soda to that, and I'm going to do it pretty thick because I want this to be very, very textured. So I'm just gonna mix 50-50 and mix that around, and then I realized that I probably put a little bit too much baking soda, so I just added a little bit of water. The good thing with this paint is that even if you add water, it doesn't do anything with the color. It's so pigmented that the color really just stays there. So I end up doing probably about 3 or 4 coats on this, only because, like I said, I wanted to get that really heavy grainy texture on there. So I'm going for a look of cement or stone, so that's why it's so heavy. So I grabbed my clear DIY wax and also the white wax, and I mixed these two together, and I put them on the vase. And the reason why I mix them is because the clear wax just makes that white wax go a little bit further. So I just applied that all over, and then I grabbed my decrepit dust and I started to sprinkle that into the wax while it was still somewhat sticky and stuff. And then I just got a paper towel and I kind of smudged that over, and I just did that until I felt like it was where I wanted it to be. I did go back with my paint and baking soda mixture and just kind of went back and forth with that and the decrepit dust until I was happy. And this is the end result of that, and I think it came out pretty good. It looks like stone to me, so hopefully y'all like that. And before we go on to the next project, just to let you know that a lot of the things you see me make here, I actually have for sale on our website, so go check that out. So project 3, I actually am going to grab my faded burlap again, and I have this candlestick, and it's pretty textured. It feels like really almost like a sandy finish to it. So I just went in with straight paint. I didn't put any baking soda in there because the candlestick itself already had so much texture to it. So I let that dry, and then I got my Jolie clear wax, and I put that all over the candlestick. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I am going to put some dark wax on next, and because that candlestick is so textured, I just didn't want it to stick and be so dark. So that's why I put the clear, just to kind of give it a barrier. So I grabbed this bare dark wax, and you'll see that I'm really working that in there. I'm really pushing it into those grooves because I wanted to stick into all of those little crevices. And then since the clear wax is on there, it's actually allowing me to kind of push that back, and you know, keep that dark wax in the crevices, but take off anything that's on the raised surfaces of that. So once I got that where I wanted it, then I grabbed my white wax again and I went over it. But with the white wax, I'm kind of pouncing it, but I'm not being too forceful with it and pushing it into those crevices. It's more surface. And then when I wipe it back with the paper towel, I'm kind of leaving some in those crevices that kind of got in there, just to kind of give it another layer of depth. So it's all about layering. When you layer, it just makes everything so much more interesting. So then I grabbed my gilding wax, of course, and I'm gonna go over the candlestick with my finger, but it's very light, very, very light. I'm not being heavy-handed with this at all. I'm just barely skimming it, and you almost don't even see it unless you see just a glimmer of it. So once that's all set up, I actually grabbed my Gorilla Glue, the clear, and I got a set of these 4 plates, I think from Home Goods, and so I'm gonna glue it on top and make a riser out of it. And so there it is there, and that's how I styled it, and hopefully you like that. So moving on to our project 4 is this picture frame that I have, and it had this black paint and gold finish, and I'll tell on myself I did that because it just didn't, but it didn't turn out the way I had envisioned it, so I did something different. I grabbed the faded burlap again, and it's straight paint. And I actually watered it down just a bit, because I noticed that when it's a little bit thinner, it kind of gets into all those little crevices, excuse me, easier, and you don't spend so much time trying to work that thick paint into all those little grooves. So I gave that about 2 or 3 coats, and I let it dry, and then I grabbed my dark bear wax, and I'm gonna go straight in on that. I'm not gonna put a clear wax or anything ahead of time. I'm just gonna go straight in with that dark wax. So I'm going in and I'm working it into all those little crevices and swirls and everything, and then I'm just wiping it back, and it gave it like a really nice little chocolatey color. So then I went back in with my faded burlap, and I actually added a little bit more water to that container that I already had, and thinned it out even a little more because I wanted to do more of a wash on it, just so that you could still see it, so it becomes translucent, because I still wanted to see some of that dark wax. So I'm just going over the highlights, and that way to kind of bring those raised areas out. So I'm not doing anything heavy. I'm just wiping on and taking off, and then anything that I saw I put too much paint, I just went back in with my dark wax and kind of toned that down a little bit. So once that dried, I went in with my white wax again, my DIY white wax, and I went over everything on there, and mostly I just pounced on the raised surfaces. I didn't work that into the grooves or anything. I just kind of stayed really light and just pounced over the raised areas, and that kind of brought those raised areas back to life. So then I grabbed the gilding wax, and with my finger I just went over those raised areas, just kind of like skimming over the top of it. Not anything too heavy. What I ended up doing was grabbing a wet paper towel, and even just kind of taking those gold areas back that I felt I got a little too heavy-handed. So I put a picture in there that I printed off of Graphics Fairy, or Fairy, something like that. And then styled that. So hopefully you like that. project 5, and here I have this frame, and this actually did come with a canvas inside of it, which you'll see later, but I'm just wiping it off here, and I'm gonna go in with my faded burlap again, and this is just straight paint and watered down a little bit, just because this has also a lot of crevices and grooves. I did go over this frame probably a good 2 or 3 times because it just had a little bit of a slicker surface and trying to get into all those grooves, but I wanted to make sure that I had full coverage on that. So I let that dry, and then I went in with my white wax, and I was pretty heavy-handed with the white wax. I made sure that I worked it all into those grooves and got it in there really well and stuff, and then I just wiped it back and, you know, put it on and wiped it back. So then I went in and I mixed together this antique wax, the white wax and clear wax, and the reason why I wanted to do kind of more like a really light wash on this. I didn't want it to be dark like I had done the picture frame, how it was a really heavy dark wax on there. So I just wanted something to look more lightly aged and not just fiercely, you know, where there's a heavy-handed wax. So you can see I got a smaller brush, and I'm just kind of wiping that into all the little crevices and wiping it back. It's not very dark at all. I mean, you can tell it's there, but it's not super dark. So I was really happy with the way this turned out. I really liked it. So, and then I got my gilding wax, and again I just went over and skimmed it with my finger, super light, nothing really heavy, just barely a glimmer of that. So I didn't want it to take away from, you know, the beauty of the frame by itself. So, and I ended up wiping some of it back anywhere where I felt it got a little too heavy. So and that was that for the frame. I thought that came out really beautiful. This was the actual canvas that was in there. There was something on it, but I had painted it black a while back, and but I wanted it to look more chalkboard, so I went and got my old school DIY paint, because even though it looks like it goes on black here, it actually, when it dries to a really light, like not a light, but it dries more gray, dark gray. So I grabbed my erasable chalk ink from IOD and some stamps that I think these are fairly new for me. I don't think I've used these before, but I scuffed that up with a little sanding block, and now I'm putting some of that ink on a plastic sheet and just kind of rolling over it with my brayer. So then I have here's what those are called. They're, I can't even see that. They're anyway, I have it linked there. So and I just go over that. What I did was I actually put the frame on, and I went around with a pencil just so that I know where that frame is, and I don't stamp so far close to the edge that I lose some of that detail from the frame covering it. So I just went over with my brayer, and I just followed that line. I went inside of that pencil line and just worked my way around, just loading that stamp up with the brayer, and I overlapped the ends a little bit so that way it just looked like a continuous wreath of leaves and stuff. So once I got to the last little bit of that, since it was a smaller space, I just inked up half of that, and I just stamped half of that. I didn't go all the way, so it didn't overlap a bunch. So I let that dry, and then I went over to my Cricut, and I made up a little vinyl stencil for myself, and this doesn't stick the best to this paint because it's just, you know, it's such a porous surface that it doesn't stick great, but it sticks well enough to do the job. So so I grabbed some of my gilding flakes, and I had some of this nail art glue, and this is another one that you could use that I also have used, but I used the nail art glue in this case. So and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that glue and I'm going to put it in a little tray, and I have this little pouncy tool that I'm going to pounce over, and I'm just going to go through and pounce over the opening parts of that stencil. And this stuff dries really fast, so you don't have to wait long. So I went over it and I let it sit and I let it dry, and that was a really bad thing to do because it actually like stretches, so there's no way of taking it off clearly. So that was a fail. So learning my lesson, let's try this again. So I went back and made another stencil for myself and applied that to the sign. And the thing that I didn't do, and well, this time I'm not going to use the pouncer. I'm actually going to use the brush that came in there, and I'm trying to put this on really fast and a lot thicker because it dries so fast, and I don't want it to dry before I get a chance to take that stencil off. I need to do it while it's wet, or it'll do the same thing and stretch out. So I got that stencil off, and when this dries, it dries really tacky, so that's how the gold leaf sticks to it. So I let it dry, and then I started applying the gold leaf to it. Stay with me here because I know this looks like a really hot mess, but it's gonna turn out, I promise. So I applied the gold leaf all to that, just pushing it down with my finger as I go and making sure all of it was pushed down and on that glue well. And then what I did was I got a really soft brush and I just started brushing that over really lightly to remove anything that wasn't stuck down. And voila, look at, amazing from that mess that was before and how it came back. So I grabbed my old school again, and what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up with that. I'm just cleaning up maybe some of the stuff from the first try that got gold leaf stuck to it, and some other things that happened there. So I'm just kind of cleaning up that. So, and this is how Project 5 turned out. This one I'm super happy with. I just think it came out beautiful. And I'm so happy that my idea for using that those gilding flakes turned out. So thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you have someone that might be interested in these videos and might like them, please share with them, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And thank you so much. We'll see you Friday.